it's your $2 Tuesday movie critic here with another movie. Today, I'm going to be reviewing Tammy, the new comedy starring Melissa McCarthy. Now, full disclosure, before I get started with the movie, I just like to say that the word comedy is being thrown around a little bit too willy-nilly lately. The movies that I've seen this summer thus far that have called themselves comedy, such as Tammy and Think Like a Man 2, these were movies that were nice and they were smart and they had funny moments, but I would not necessarily call them comedies. And I'm going to say the same thing about Tammy. Yes, Melissa McCarthy was great in this movie, just like the rest of the cast. It was a great ensemble cast, but this was not considered a comedy for me. If you saw the previews for Tammy, then you saw the funny parts of Tammy. The rest of the movie was sweet, sentimental. There were even a few dramatic moments in there, but it wasn't a full-fledged comedy, and I can't say that. If you're going to this movie hoping to laugh hilariously or out loud like you did in The Heat, do not, because it's not the same kind of movie. Tammy is a woman that pretty much has not grown up. She has a really good heart for the most part, but she's kind of self-centered, and she doesn't see how the world around her is affected by her decisions. She only sees how her decisions affect her. She always seems to be dumped on because of her decisions, not just by others, but even by herself. She decides, okay, I'm going to get out of this town, do something new with my life. But you found out somewhere in the beginning of the movie, this is not the first time she's made this decision. And I know what you see in the previews, but the movie goes a totally different route. And I was really surprised. I actually liked the movie. I really did like the movie because it was sweet, sentimental, and it didn't try to go for the dumb laugh or be all sophomoric with the comedy. It went for humor, but it also went for the heart, and that's why I liked it. But if you're going there, like I said, to look for a movie like The Heat, where you were laughing hilariously almost throughout the entire movie, like I did, well, this is not the movie for you because you're not going to do that. There are a couple of scenes that you'll probably chuckle a bit, but there's not really any that I can remember that were totally laugh out loud scenes. There were some surprising moments. There were definitely a lot of sweet moments, and there were some moments where you were like, did this just happen? But there weren't any hilarious scenes. The cast itself, great acting, great movie. It was believable, totally believable, except for the one scene with Tammy coming to her home and finding her husband. That I just cannot believe happened. But, well, when you see the movie, you know what I'm talking about. And it continued to happen. I think that was the part that, is still happening? You know, because every time. But they didn't go for, trying to go for a funny moment. At least I hope that's not what they were trying to do. Trying to draw out something that happened once that was funny and then keep drawing it out a little bit too much. It didn't seem like that's what they were doing, and if they were, they failed, because after the first time, it was just like, really? Is this happening again? Is it still happening? But for the most part, it's a good movie. It is sweet. It is sentimental. It's not dramatic. So, you know, there are a few scenes that kind of leer towards the dramatic side, but they kind of stay on the fence of comedy. But it's not a comedic movie. It is a movie that has funny scenes in it. What some people like to call a dramedy, but there wasn't enough drama in it for it to be called a drama either. So I know some people like to call those coming of age movies, but Tammy is in her 40s, or at least her late 30s. So I don't know if you can call it that, but why not? Because she learns a lot of lessons, and she does do a bit of growing up, more than she has done most of her life. So you could go with that coming of age movie for the middle age. So let's go with that. And it was a good movie. So I would recommend it to people. Melissa McCarthy does a great job in it. So does her supporting cast. Susan Sarandon. Like, I've never seen Susan Sarandon before. That was quite interesting. Kathy Bates, really cool in this movie. Sandra Oh in this movie as well. A lot of good people in there. You know, the previews make it out to be a hilarious movie, which it's not. You should go see it. I recommend it. I would go see it again. Probably when it comes out on cable, though. I wouldn't go back and see it at the movies. You may ask, what would I consider comedies? Well, for me, a comedy would be something like The Hangover. Just number one. The rest of them, not so much. The Heat. Again, I've mentioned it before. The Heat was hilarious. This is a comedy. I'm Gonna Get You Sucker. I laughed throughout pretty much that entire movie because it was so funny. These are comedies to me. So movies like that. The old school movies that I wanted to compare to Tammy. The first one is a 1992 movie. Yeah, we're going way back there. That's called Big Girls Don't Cry, They Get Even. This stars Hilary Wolf, that plays Laura, the main character. Now, the way I compared this to Tammy is that Laura, who is actually a teenager, and Tammy only acts like a teenager, she feels like her life sucks completely. And like most teenagers, she kind of like is just thinking about how it's affecting her and not how it's affecting other people. And she decides that the best thing for her to do is to, like Tammy, get away from it, get out of town. But in Tammy's case, it's not illegal. In Lauren's case, it is because she's still a teenager. And she decides to leave with her stepbrother, who doesn't know she's leaving. She hitches in the back of his truck, hides out, and he takes her unknowingly to his campsite where he decides to spend the summer. Initially, they get there and they start having a good time. Then, of course, her stepbrother realizes he needs to let the parents know. Now, in this movie, there are quite a few parents, there are quite a few siblings, step-siblings, step-parents, biological parents, half-brothers, half-sisters. There's a lot of stuff going on, so I won't get into that. The correlation between Tammy and Big Girls Don't Cry, They Get Even is that Laura decides to leave home just like Tammy decides to leave home. Only this is Laura's first time deciding to leave home. And she takes an unwilling partner who, unlike Tammy, who takes a willing partner, her grandmother, on the road. Actually, in the movie, Tammy's grandmother does most of the taking. But she has to pull her along the way because, you know, Tammy becomes reluctant and wants to go back to her old ways after a while. Which, in the other case, Laura wants to stay gone, but her stepbrother not necessarily wants to stay gone. He wants to make sure that the family knows. Laura misunderstands it and thinks that he's trying to get rid of her, so she runs away again. And just like Tammy does, Tammy and her grandmother do, Laura meets all kinds of people on the road and has little misadventures. The difference there is, again, Laura's a teenager, so her adventures are a little more G-rated than Tammy and her grandmother's adventures. And, you know, the cops are looking for Laura because she's a teenager. And at some point in the movie, the cops are looking for Tammy and her grandmother. That is kind of funny. Again, like I said, it has its funny moments. Big Girls Don't Cry, They Get Even. It's also considered a comedy. It was funny. It wasn't hilarious either. It had funny moments. But again, like I didn't consider Tammy a drama, I don't consider Big Girls Don't Cry a drama. It was a sweet movie. And I actually, the more I watched it, because I have it on VHS, so the more I watch the movie, the more I like it. But my initial time watching it, I was like, oh, it's okay. It's sweet. The family in the beginning, they're all like in their own zones. And it's weird how the mother, the biological mother of Laura, has more in common with her stepdaughter than she does with Laura. And I kind of found that one disconcerting. But in the movie, Tammy's mother and her, they don't exactly click. They actually look at things totally different. Tammy's mother looks at them as a grown-up would. Tammy looks at them as possibly a grown-up that hasn't really done all of her growing up. The correlation there, like I said, is the way they both decide to leave home, the way they both have their little misadventures. Even one is a little bit more PG-13 and some parts are a little R-rated. And they each meet different people along the way. Some are pretty good people, some are not so good people, but they end up surviving it, And Laura, pretty much learns that her family does care for her, does love her, I should say. And Tammy ends up making some realizations herself. So that's the first correlation. The second one is a movie that's closer to this decade. It was in 2011. It starred Charlize Theron, the movie Young Adults. Now this movie, this woman by the name of Mavis Gary. And Mavis is a ghostwriter, and she writes these books about the young adult, and the series is about to come to an end because nobody really wants to read them anymore. And Mavis finds as her book is about to come to an end, so is, her life, because this is what she's been doing for the most of her life. This is not only her way of making a living, it was like the thing that she was pretty much focused on. So she gets a bit of news that turns her in another direction, back home. Rather, Tammy leaves home. Mavis decides to go back home to be with her high school sweetheart, who she thinks is sending her signals that he wants to be with her again. And initially that's not the case, but during the movie you find that he does send some mixed signals. That's kind of a jerky thing to do. Mavis goes home and she has her own misadventures, not necessarily on the road, but when she gets home she does. And the correlation that I find between Tammy and Mavis in Young Adult is that they're both screw-ups, pretty much. Mavis, she would like to believe her life is together. She doesn't have anything outside of that. She doesn't have anything outside of her writing. And for the most part, she's a big kid, just like Tammy is a big kid. And when she goes home, she's kind of like self-centered in her ways. She just wants the world, her decisions to work the way she wants them to work. She wants everything to revolve around her, just like Tammy does. Mavis has to grow up, just like Tammy does. It's almost like a coming-of-age movie for adults. And Mavis learns a lot of lessons, and she actually, somewhere in the movie, decides that, hey, I got to get my life together. I'm pretty screwed up. But that's not the end of that. The movie Young Adults was labeled a comedy as well, or is in the comedic genre. The thing is that it did have a few laugh out loud moments, but I would definitely consider this more of a drama than a comedy. A drama with funny moments in it. A dramedy. Out of all of them, this was most of a drama. The other two were like lighthearted movies, They weren't necessarily comedies, but they definitely weren't dramas either. So lighthearted, good family movies to go to. I probably, but with Tammy, I would definitely make sure the kids were over 13. And, there's a lot of cursing in the movie. There's a lot of, things that kids probably shouldn't be doing in the movie. Like there's a scene where Tammy and her grandmother, Tammy is drinking and driving, So there's some touchy moments in there. So parents, definitely beware of that. It's not one of those movies that you would take your kid to see. Teenagers, yeah. All three are good movies. That is the correlation I made. They all have funny ladies as their stars. And all three movies had a great cast. I would suggest you go see all three movies if you get a chance. You know, I'm sure that Big Girls Don't Cry, They Get Even, is still on VHS. Or you could probably get it on DVD now. I actually saw it where a couple of people got it on Laserdisc from Amazon at a pretty good price. And then since Young Adult was just out in 2011, I'm sure you can get that on DVD, on Amazon, or pretty much anywhere. So I hope you liked the critique today. And like I said, I recommend you go see all the movies. The demographic for Tammy is more of adults, our teens. I think the teenagers would like it too. Hope you enjoyed the review today, and I'll see you next time. If you have an old school movie that you think is better compared to Tammy, let me know. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.